Now you're probably all wondering what the father did to not have visitation with his daughter, or supervised visitation. He did absolutely nothing. There was a federal lawsuit. He filed a federal lawsuit, which he gave me a copy of. I've sort of cut it down a little bit. What they were trying to get him to do was sign the deed over to his ex-wife for the house. So therefore, they're using the children as weapons against him. This is a family court judge, which has no jurisdiction over deeds or anything else to start with. But this judge feels he did. Specific allegations that the father made in his federal lawsuit. He was denied a right to a trial and freedom from illegal incarceration beginning on April 1st. They put him in jail for 8 days. Right to a trial and freedom from illegal incarceration beginning on April 9th, 2002. 38 days he was put in jail. Right to counsel on March 18th. As I said, right to counsel to defend yourself is not a right in New York State. Parental rights terminated. In other words, seeing his daughter without a notice or a hearing by an official act of the judge. He just terminated them on his own. Defendant Peter M. Foreman's serial temporary order of protection scheme forbid the plaintiff parent absolutely no contact with his 2 younger children for 755 days. And this guy did absolutely nothing to his children. Right to counsel on June 12th and June 25th. Right to call witnesses. He wasn't allowed to call witnesses when he did get a trial. Right to equal protection of law and a right to a fair and impartial trial. On April 1st, signed a commitment order ordering the incarceration of plaintiff Thomas, in which the defendant, Peter Foreman, sentenced the plaintiff to 60 days in jail without a trial. A true copy of the commitment order is annexed. I have the federal complaint right here that he filed. There was no trial, not allowed to present evidence, no counsel, even though he demanded counsel. There was no filing of an accusatory instrument, no personal jurisdiction over Lawton, was again arrested on April 9, 2002. Lawton had 2 other children residing with him, creating a state of homelessness for them. The court doesn't care about the kids. They use them as weapons. Foreman denied Lawton counsel 26 times. And his counsel, then when he did have counsel, notified the court that she wasn't available that day in court because she had to be in another courtroom 60 miles away. He denied the motion. He wouldn't postpone it. He's going ahead. Defendant threatened with incarceration and attempt to intimidate and coerce him to sign over his interest in the marital home. Foreman denied his request to contact his attorney before signing the deed over. And this is the same guy that's keeping him from seeing his children. On March 2th, the defendant judge took prosecutorial stance against plaintiff. The record Exhibit 4 depicts a mean-spirited, bullying defendant, Judge Peter M. From threatening plaintiff with incarceration 4 times, which the defendant, Froman, had no authority to impose. Defendant Froman was absent and requires notice and warning set forth by statute. Therefore, the defendant Froman was without personal jurisdiction over him. Rights as 2 younger children were terminated by the court order on May 3rd, 2000, without notice and without a hearing. This is what's going on in the court system behind these closed courtrooms. Depriving plaintiff of his rights protected by the 5th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. Amended orders were attached. The order stated, shall have no contact with the above-named children until further order of the court. Thomas Lawton shall not communicate directly or indirectly with his ex-wife or his children in any way by mail, telephone, email, voicemail, or other electronic means except as specifically prescribed in this order. This judge needs to be removed. Defendant conspired with the defendant to sever and to keep severed Thomas's parental relationship and contact with his youngest children, absent a compelling state interest and without notice and without a trial. His daughter is very eloquent in what she stated. Obviously, he didn't do anything to his children, but they're using the children as weapons. These are sick judges. Defendant, 1 hour, he got 1 hour a weekly supervised with his two beginning May. Guess what? After 15 sessions, the supervisor retired and she never got anybody else to replace him. He went without. That's what the girl was talking about when she said there were periods of time she'd get to see him and all of a sudden they abruptly stopped. They don't care that she'd failed to arrange any visits with his children during Thanksgiving or Christmas. They don't care. I know the individual defendant denied plaintiff his right to call witnesses, a Sixth Amendment right at his children's custody trial. I am essentially, defendant from, this is a quote, I am essentially denying Mr. Lawton's motion to reconsider that previous order of the court, which means that with regard to custody, Mr. Lawton will be restricted to himself as a witness because based on prior decision of this court. So now he's not allowed to call witnesses about what's going on or show what's going on with his kids. I would first like to express my dismay at not being able to speak with the judge personally on February 5th when I waited more than 2 hours at the courthouse. That was from a doctor. Wanted to see the judge about another doctor, not the one who wrote the letter. This is what's going on in the court system. They're doing numbers on these children. He can't see his kids because he won't sign a deed over. You know he got railroaded left and right. The court system doesn't care. One other thing with Tom. He filed the federal suit. He ended up in jail. I'm sure that was dismissed because federal judges don't like to address illegal proceedings by the family court judges. Everybody in family court would probably be in federal court. We then filed a writ of habeas corpus to get him out of jail. The issues before the court to get him out of jail, that he was illegally and fails, as in that the Supreme Court orders, fails to comply with the Child Support Standards Act, and he was deprived of his right to due process in that one, he was not given a trial on the issue of willfulness for his last alleged violation of the support orders. He was denied his right to present evidence and to call witnesses for his defense as required by the Sixth Amendment. There was no finding that Mr. Lawton had willfully reduced his income in order to avoid his obligation to pay child support. That the standard of living of the children of the marriage seems only to apply to the wife and the children residing with her, not to the father and the two children residing with him. That his child support, not only did they have him paying child support, but then they also had him paying the mortgage on the house and everything, which is included in child support. So these orders don't comply. And these courts just, they don't care what happens to the fathers. The orders don't comply with the guidelines. Who cares? We're getting money out of him. He goes to jail if he doesn't pay. That's extortion. And nobody cares. I mean, these judges are just The court failed to state the reasons for the deviation. The respondent's support obligation is required. In other words, the order deviates. They don't have to say why they're ordering him to pay all this extra stuff that he's not required to pay. You know, and he made several attempts to reduce his child support. They don't care. They just blow him off. Not only did they blow him off, they blew his daughter off and his other son, keeping them away from their father, who did absolutely nothing to them. And they wonder why children are getting into trouble today. I did a whole thing on statistics of about children with fatherless homes. Now you know why they're fatherless homes. It's not because the fathers are refusing to take care of their children. It's because the court is refusing to allow the fathers to take care of their children and to have relationships with them. I know a lot of fathers that have packed up and left. One just packed up and left and went back to Ohio. He's, ex-military. He did everything the court asked him to do, and yet they still will not enforce his visitation. He had nothing here but his son, who he worshiped. But he couldn't take it anymore. I hadn't seen his son in months. And they keep saying, well, you got to do this. He does everything they tell him to do. He gets reports from the people they tell him to go, and the reports say he's fine. But no, that's not good enough. This is what I'm saying. The courts are stripping our military and everybody else of their rights. It's got to stop.